We see many issues emanating from Idicot, from the Esplanade, the Biashara. We see issues emanating from a number of the state agencies, Festivals Commission. Still, we don't know who the promoter is. And the questions come as to whether or not we can rein in what is happening. Secondly, we will have Dr. Denise Soefatangas, past presiding officer, who would try to explain to us why there is this difficulty to have questions answered when they are asked, so that we, the public, can know what is transpiring with our THA. So hopefully she will be able to illuminate us on those matters. And to the tail end and closing off, we will have Mr. Leroy George and some of his team from Full 100 Democracy, who would try to distill, and we will ask the question whether or not they are of the view that democracy, like in my mind, that democracy is at stake. Apart from those interviews, I will want to address some very topical issues. One being the UK visa restriction. And a number of politicians, both in Tobago and Trinidad, appear to now be coming out from below a rock to understand that we live in a very dangerous society, and a society that other countries wish to protect themselves from. Last year we had 600 plus murders. We had 26 of those in Tobago records, but yet we are flabbergasted. Yet we are shocked that the UK will decide that they would institute visa restrictions, and the colonial bogey is being called out against the UK, in my mind, that they must not protect themselves from us. And, I will address that issue tonight. I will also address the issue of the airport opening. And I will also want to call, in my mind, for the resignation of the Chief Secretary and the leader of the PNM in Tobago, because the office of the Chief Secretary is an office, and we ought to respect the office, and we ought to make sure that the office is respected. And I want to address that issue tonight, because as a Tobagonian, I felt the office of the Chief Secretary, not Farley Chavez Augustine, but the office of the Chief Secretary. In my mind, I cannot conceive of a A&R Robinson, not even of a Kelvin Charles, not even of a Orville London, not even of, surely not Hochoi Charles, being invited to a function in Tobago and not being able to speak and attending that function. I don't understand it at all. And I will try to engage this matter tonight. And finally, I would want to address the issue of sandals and the instruction to have sandals come again, because for one, I have a concern about sandals. The construct of the sandals resort and how it interacts with the space called Tobago, in terms of how we benefit from all-inclusive hotel, when we may not have the kind of systems in place, or agricultural systems, to benefit from the produce that they may require. The number of all-inclusive arrangements that they have that might never allow us to see the visitors that come, any at all. They may never interact with, and they may never provide any economic benefit to Tobago apart from increasing arrivals. And I have a concern about sandals. But before I get into all those matters, I would like to ask the producer whether or not we have Mr. Kelvon Morris online so that we can begin our conversation with Mr. Morris whether democracy is at stake and the concerns that we would have with the democracy in Trinidad and most certainly in Tobago. Mr. Morris, good night. How are thou?
Good night, Mr. Jofiel, and thank you for having me. Let me say good night to all Tobagonians wherever you may be at this time.
Yes, so Mr. Morris, it's plain talk, so we will get straight into plain speech.
Sure.
Well, I have an opportunity to have accountability because, in fact, you are my representative, Mr. Morris. So I have the opportunity to get some accountability. So
Sure.
the CivilNet survey in 2023, and we had a discussion with the persons from CivilNet, and we will have a discussion tonight on that as well, indicated that there was an average performance of the administration, and not only an average performance of the administration, but an average performance of the minority. And that is a concern for me in terms of democracy, if in fact the administration is performing on average and also the minority is performing on average. How do you respond to those kinds of survey results and the implications for democracy in Tobago?
Well, I think, I'm not one to make excuses, but if persons understand the kind of constraints and constitutional constraints of the office of the minority, then perhaps people would have a greater appreciation for the performance of the minority leader, because whereas you have secretaries and divisions who are staffed with a number of public servants, you can appreciate that the office of the minority leader, who is charged with the responsibility of holding an entire government to account, only in a real sense has one technical position, that position being a research officer. So imagine you have an office that has to deal with a number of legal matters, right FOIs, challenge the administration. And the way how the system is so constructed, the executive is basically is funding the minority. There's no independence of the assembly legislature. The clerk of the assembly is but a figurehead or a delegated position to the chief ad. So the clerk has no real administrative power, and therefore all decisions have to go back to the chief administrator, who has to get permission from the very executive. So take, for instance, one time I attempted to I needed a legal guidance and advice on a matter with respect to the TRHA. And I was being told that in that matter, if I was to take the THA to court on that matter, I would have to get my legal support coming from the very THA staffing. So imagine himself unto himself. And therefore, we have to take a serious look, more than just simply talking autonomy, but how do we so recreate the various arms of government in Tobago as to ensure proper accountability, scrutiny. Look at, for instance, the Public Accounts Committee. Right now, we have a situation where it is a 5-member committee, and that 5-member committee is made up of 1 member from the minority. That is how it is constituted, and if other 4 members come from the majority. It therefore means if they do not want to be held accountable, all the majority needs to do is not show up, which in some respect has been happening at times. And therefore, how we are now looking and having discussion as to whether we can actually have enshrined in our THA standing orders. The Public Accounts Committee also corrupting persons from outside of the public sphere and having them part of the Public Accounts Committee so that you can actually have a quorum independent of the executive members. And so as I said, not trying to create a position of making excuses. And as a matter of fact, I do not accept that we have done more with the little that we have. Just the matter with respect to EID cut, to have that matter taken up by a private individual, that is a costly kind of arrangement. Not many lawyers will undertake those arrangements pro bono. And therefore, if the minority does not have a facility, or even if I try to access the facility that says I can, in fact, recruit legals or outsource legal services, there's an impediment, because that has to be approved by the very people to whom you are trying to hold accountable. Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Morris, I think I get the general thrust of your argument. One issue comes to mind, I had a discussion with Mr. Watson Duke, and he declined to come on tonight. And in declining, he indicated the reason for his decline was that he experienced the very same thing under previous PNM administration, where he had issues, and I think it was public knowledge, where he complained about not having an office space, and I think the office space might be due to his tenacity and to his fight to have office space and staff. So that's one issue that I would want you to address. And secondly, the issue of a proposal. Now, if you have these concerns about the minority and the challenges the minority have, I think every quarter there's a proposal you can take to the House to say, okay, look.
We are on the same page. We are on the same page, because that is the intention. I do intend to bring that matter to full discussion, and even the whole issue of the autonomy of the Assembly legislature, and as a broader discussion. So that matter will be addressed. I also, it is ironic that Mr. Duke would say that he experienced the same thing, because governance is supposed to be an improvement on what you met. And if you would have gone through a situation where you felt it was inadequate, you would think that when you get into the situation, you would improve it, you would facilitate it being better. And Mr. Duke sat there for some time. So we cannot excuse Mr. Duke. As a matter of fact, one of the first things Mr. Duke and they did was to make a mockery of the democracy to which you speak about. Because here it is, the person who sits as speaker is a direct competitor of the minority leader. And you can only imagine, as a human being, how difficult it is to be impartial in that kind of environment. And therefore, him now saying he has to rescue me is a direct result of his own actions as part of the administration before he left. So you have to appreciate that, the way how things are constructed and constituted makes it even more difficult for me as an individual, based on the situation, to function, and any minority leader, because of as I said, the limitations of the office, be it resource-wise, etc., etc. But this is an excuse, because as we speak, there are a number of matters that are engaging law enforcement authorities, both at the level of the police and the level of the Integrity Commission. I have given statements in furtherance of investigations happening, and those investigations happen because you have an alert minority that is not just talking the talk, but we are actually following through on the very things that we say we will do, we'll report. We are not just coming and wave things just to, sully people name or anything like that. We bring documented information, and then we refer those information to the places that have the resources to do the investigation.
All right, thanks. And that brings me quickly to another question I had. There seems to me, it seems to me we have problems with the THA state enterprises and accountability across the board.
Agreed. Agreed.
My understanding and my knowledge is that there's a thing called the State Enterprises Performance and Monitoring Manual. As I said, you have quarterly, you can bring a proposal to the House. Why haven't you brought a motion, to the House that says, because it seems to be a recurring decimal across all these state enterprises, that we need to adopt this State Enterprises Monitoring Manual and make whatever minor changes in terms of reference to the Chief Secretary rather than the Minister of Finance, which I think, are things that you could adjust and so on. But why not bring a proposal to the House that addresses frontally this issue about how THA enterprises account for their stewardship of our taxpayers' resources? Why not move a motion in that regard? A question to you.
So you could imagine that we have an opportunity every quarter, as you rightfully mentioned, but in a real sense, twice per year, because if you look how the quarters run, and by the time you get an opportunity in the first portion of the year, then you go through, you have to wait till the latter, because we go on a break between June and September. And therefore, you have to also prioritize what you may want to treat with. So there has been a number of important issues dispensed. Of course, even now, there's a strategy by this administration to now even block out and minimize the impact of these motions, because they are now putting motions on the day that we have private motions, which is a new kind of arrangement. Usually, past administrations respected the fact that this day was dedicated to the minority and allowed the minority to have its say on that day. This administration has now adopted a strategy to bring motions, and of course, based on the standing orders, their motion take precedent. The business of the executive takes precedence over any other motion. And sometimes they go, well, in the last instance, they went until about 8 o'clock. So you could imagine the limitation with the minority now treating and dispensing of a motion in the day designated. So again, this is an administration that is finding all kind of strategy to avoid being held accountable. Yes, we will do it. In fact, I'm also considering a motion to deal with over 40 unanswered written questions. These are questions that you either promised that we would send, and when you ask oral questions, and they promise that they will give the follow-up in writing, or we would have written for responses, and they have just failed not to respond. And there's little in the standing orders to bring them to bear, except that I bring a motion and call for action, and it's just really two persons as the minority. So even when we bring the motion, and imagine a motion that is critical against them, how many of them would really vote to implement the recommendations and the resolutions of those motions?
Okay.
So you understand?
No, definitely. I understand the challenge you seem to be facing. Quickly, I want to move on to
Sure.
On the campaign trail. The current Chief Secretary spoke about a whistleblower legislation, which I thought, in my mind, was something very useful. What are the thoughts of the minority on, since he is not moving the motion, about moving a motion for the same whistleblower legislation that would allow people who have a concern about the operations and have information with respect to the operations of the divisions or the THA companies, that they can blow the whistle and make sure that you have the kind of assistance you need in order to bring the matters to the fore. So your response to whistleblower legislation?
Well, again, and if you follow the minority, the officer, very early, we launched that very sort of, we didn't call it whistleblower because you don't want to, sometimes when people hear the word whistleblower, you get scared away from participating. But we launched a very innovative and very confidential way of persons sending information, and is because of that very facility, we have been able to identify so many areas of infractions, and we have been able to report them either to the OPR, to the Integrity Commission, or to the Anti-Corruption Investigative Bureau. We continue to get very credible information from public servants, and one thing we guarantee them, and it has been shown to be so far, is that you will just give us the information. We don't need to know who you are. And we have been getting it. We have a virtual platform that allows it to be sent. So whereas, yes, legislation is always good because it provides protection, but at the same time, we are saying, absent of the legislation, you can still provide information. And
All right.
as a minority, again, we have provided the facility. We have you can do it via WhatsApp. We say even just use the usual method. The mailbox method is very effective. And I continue to appeal to Tobagonians who are uncomfortable with the plethora of wrongdoing that is happening both in the THA and its agencies, especially IDCOT, to continue to come forward and expose it, because every process that takes away from accountability and transparency robs you in some way of some level of development.
All right. So Mr. Morris, I couldn't allow you to leave this program without saying, okay, look, I have said on this program, I have a concern about the moral authority of this administration to speak on matters of corruption or of mismanagement, because in fact, I pointed in some previous series to the whole issue of CAL. For 9 years, CAL has not accounted to us for its operations. It was a newspaper article, I showed it on this program. We had the issue of the Auditor General, which also I think the Secretary for Agriculture brought up in a response to a motion or to the last motion in the House, and she went into speak about the whole issue of the challenge against the Auditor General and the fees that had to be expended, and we have a similar kind of situation with the current administration. How do you respond to people like myself who would say that you're challenged with a moral authority to say these things in Tobago when in fact you are part of an administration, a PNM administration that seems to be doing the very same thing in Trinidad?
Well, to say I am a part of I hold absolutely no position in the PNM led central government, but of course I'm a member of the PNM and a party that both within its own affairs have demonstrated accountability. And to pull out one state entity and cast that as something unbecoming of the whole, when there are many state entities compliant, there are many ministries compliant, and therefore, but what you're seeing in Tobago is across the board. Take, for example, the OPR is saying almost, I think it was 7 out of the 9 divisions are not compliant with the OPR Act, and went on to make an excuse for them, saying that, well, it's perhaps because of Tobago's unique culture. That is not culture. Following procedures and the procedures you establish has nothing to do with culture, because unless you are saying Tobagonians, which I do not accept, is proven to break the law. But at the same time, I'm very concerned, and I want to make this point publicly. Within the auditor,
Yeah, we seem to be having a technical difficulty with Mr. Morris. one of the other questions I would have wanted to pose to Mr. Morris was the whole issue of this Auditor General and the fact that both the past Minister of Finance, Mr. Kelvon, because we have a new Minister of, no, we don't have a new Minister of Finance. That was probably just media. The Kelvon, with his challenge on the Auditor General. And then we had the Chief Secretary in Tobago saying that with respect to the payments being made to national security, that he was going to do it anyway, irrespective of the Auditor General flagging, because he felt it was necessary to do in the interest of national security or interest of the security of Tobago. And so the question I would have wanted to pose to him was the whole issue of, whether or not we just breach with impunity the Finance and Exchequer Act across the board, and whether or not it really matters in any case, because both government and THA seem to be breaching it without impunity or with impunity. And we need to address it, and I would have wanted to pose that question to him as well. All right, so producer, I think we have heard Mr. Morris and his responses to our concerns with respect to the minority and the attempts of the minority to bring the current administration to book. And at this time, we'll probably go to a break so we can come back with Dr. Denise Soyafatangas, a past presiding officer of the THA, who might be able to give us some clues and some suggestions as to how, if in fact the House can or has the kind of authority to bring to heel an administration that wishes to do what it wishes to do with the funds with our funds.
It's a different type of thing down there. What? And we party till we drop down there. With a lot of pretty girls down there. Down in Tobago.
You can now get whatever you need whenever you need it anywhere in Tobago with Tobago. Your meals, medication, groceries, and shopping all delivered directly to you. No more hassle, no more stress. Get the Tobago app today on Google Play or Apple App Store.
That's TAPPOGO, and let us deliver to you.
Check our website at www.tapogo.app or call the experts at 494-TOGO and 484-4746. Tobago. Relax. We will get it to you. Tobago's at your service.
Want to get better? Where to start? What kind of exercise to do? What to eat? How to get restful sleep? Need a doctor to search for root cause? Look no further. Come to Majuba Hill Lifestyle Center Foundation at our Wellness Center in Goodwood, or Food Hub in Darrow Springs, Scarborough, or Doctor's Office in Goodwood and Darrow Spring. Contact 49 Swift 4979 438.
Coconut's Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, bull joil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meat served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules or if you are having a cooking day off.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and the host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.
Good night, viewers. We're back on Plain Talk. We have with us tonight another special guest in Dr. Denise Tisoifat Angus, former presiding officer who we rely on for guidance as to the standing orders and the operations of the legislature. I am sure that she was listening to the responses by the minority, and having been in the House, Dr. Angus, tell us, are the statements accurate made by Mr. Morris that his hands are behind his back in terms of being able to bring the administration to heel? Or are there mechanisms that are there in the House that he can use to bring accountability to the current situation that is taking place in the THA? Dr. Angus. Dr. Angus, can you turn on your mic first, please? We're not hearing you. Can you turn on your mic, please? We seem to be having some technical difficulties. Producer, you could take us to a break so that we could sort it out and return.
Calling on the power of heaven, I proclaim
Dr. Angus, can you try? Let's see if we're hearing you now. Oh my. We're still not hearing you. The audio is still not functional for some reason.
It's a different type of thing down there. And we party till we drop down there. With a lot of pretty girls down there. Down in Tobago.
You can now get whatever you need whenever you need it anywhere in Tobago with Tobago. Your meals, medication, groceries, and shopping all delivered directly to you. No more hassle, no more stress. Get the Tobago app today on Google Play or Apple App Store.
That's TAPPOGO and let us deliver to you.
Check our website at www.tapogo.app or call the experts at 494-TOGO and 484-4746. Tobago. Relax. We will get it to you. Tobago's at your service.
Coconut's Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, bull joil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meat served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules or if you are having a cooking day off.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and the host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.
In the mighty name of Jesus.
We had some challenges trying to get in Dr. Dini's Soifat Angus, distill some knowledge with respect to the legislature and how it functions, what would give the minority more teeth to treat with the matters that concern the legislature. So I'm sure we'll have on another occasion to distill that knowledge to us. At this point, we have with us Mr. Leroy George and Mr. Devon Peterkin, both of full 100 democracy. Well, I will take the opportunity to ask them to explain what this full 100 democracy is, and just basically having heard what transpired a while ago, and probably give their own assessment of whether or not they think democracy in Trinidad and Tobago is at stake and what can we do about it. So, Mr. Leroy George, good night. Mr. Peter King, good night. You can go in whatever order you choose.
Good night. I think I'll start as the founder of Full 100 Democracy. Full 100 Democracy came into existence as a result of not a lot of people being particularly knowledgeable when it comes to the fact that this year, 2025, February of this year, makes 100 years that we've been experimenting with democracy in Trinidad and Tobago. And what that exactly means is that in February of 1925, we had our first ever general elections, and it's been unbroken since then till now. The nature of that democracy has evolved, and since it's 100 years, we would like to see democracy evolve into something even more pure and democratic and holistic than what it has been in times past. So that is one of the things. So we function as a discussion group, and also as an organization, we function as who you'd hear from in a little bit, Mr. Wade Karut, our co-chair, our co-founder rather. We function as an illustration of what 100% democracy is, hence the name Full 100 Democracy. So every single thing we do it as a result of polls. We have a little WhatsApp group. You have polls. Anytime you want to make a move, we put a poll. If we agree to it, there's no set a big debate or what have you. Once you have a poll, then we go forward where that is concerned. So one of the things, the most recent things we did a poll about is that after having discussed so much since February about how democracy is, etc., we did a poll about whether we should start looking at democracy within the different political parties in the Trinidad and Tobago space. And so that is which part we are right now, examining democracy within these political parties, because as a lot of persons would agree with, the way you manage your political parties, etc., it will seep into how you govern if you were to ever gain governance. And rising tides raise all ships, sinking tides take down all ships. As a result of that, we want to make sure that Full 100 Democracy is spread throughout Trinidad and Tobago in every crease and crevice.
Right. So while I ask you to come back subsequently to what your research into party constructs and behavior could inform us on, just ask Mr. Peter King, to respond to us as well in terms of if you have a different idea or different view about Democracy 100 or something to add about Full Democracy 100 that you would want to add that Mr. George has not added for us. And what is your view? Is democracy in Trinidad and Tobago at stake?
Well, I would say Mr. George covered it pretty well, and democracy in Trinidad and Tobago is at stake. If you look at how political organizations are coming up with certain positions as we speak, they are not practicing democracy. People are placed in positions without the majority agreeing on one person. So you will see that they either have a hidden agenda or it's favoritism.
Okay, so can you give me a practical example of what you're trying to allude to?
I didn't want to touch any particular party per se, but
you could just generalize.
If you look at the PNM, the head of the PNM in the Tobago region right now, right? It was not a democratic selection.
Why?
While a democratic selection was supposed to take place, right? The two candidates were going against each other. The new leader was placed there as interim and stayed there. Without there being a democratic vote.
There are ways in which, if every political party has their constitution, and I agree 100% with Mr. Peter King. Every single political party that's worth its salt at least, right? And even some minor political parties have a constitution. And when you look at your constitution, there are ways that you go about electing a leader. And what we have seen in full 100 democracy, the last two polls we examined the PNM, we also examined the ruling administration right here in Tobago, and almost with consensus, meaning almost 100%, we could see that things are happening without democracy taking place. For example, just as he made mention, Mr. Stuart Young is now the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the PNM and the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago would have the different rules as to how somebody is elected into the position of political leader of the PNM, and whoever the political leader is expected to, once that person wins the seat in a general election, to go on to become the Prime Minister once the PNM wins the election. However, there was some maneuvering taking place that would have resulted in Stuart Young being placed there. And there was some interference that would go against full democracy. And then even if you want to keep it balanced, because this is the Tobago space, let's look at the other side, right? Just as I said earlier, rising tide raise all ship, sinking tide sink all ship, or drop all ship at the same time. You're looking at the creation of this new political entity that came into existence as a result of...
But before you come off of this Stuart Young thing, because it's topical, what is the issue of the members of parliament or the cabinet, as the case may be, agreeing that Stuart Young should be the Prime Minister? And, well, as far as I understand, the former Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, says there's no legal impediment to proceeding along those lines. I understand there's a difference between legal and ethical, and a moral construct. But tell me, what is...
Let's walk through what actually took place, right? They had a convention at the Magdalena. And when they had the convention of the Magdalena, the daily periodicals would show that originally there was nothing resembling concession on who would become the next political leader, who would become the next Prime Minister, etc. However, even though there was not concession, there is evidence that undue influence was made to change the minds of certain individuals. For example, you see persons like Shamfa Kojo would have been supporting Penelope Beckers, etc., whilst you would have had Ayanna Webster Roy originally supporting Mr. Stuart Young.
But what's undue influence?
Undue influence, right, specifically when you're talking about undue influence, it is recorded in at least one of the daily periodicals that offers pertaining to who will have this ministry or who will have that ministry, etc., was brought to the forefront in that particular meeting. And that is where the undue influence kicks in. And another, the main problem, even greater than all of that, is that the decision was not made by the membership. When it comes to Prime Minister, we expect the decision to be made by the members of parliament representing the different areas. But when it comes to the political leader, if that decision is not made by the membership of the political party, then what you have is an attack on democracy. And that is why almost holistically, full 100 democracy would be very concerned about that. And even on the other side, because we need to be fair and make sure and look at all sides, right? You have a situation where the ruling political party in the Tobago House of Assembly at the end of 2021 would have been the Progressive Democratic Patriots. Persons would have had the different ballots, etc. And on the ballot, they would have seen the acronym PDP, they would have seen the symbol, the bamboo bolife, and they would know that that comes with a mandate, right? And so when the people put their X in that particular position, and then the party has its constitution, and I have a hard copy of that constitution. I know exactly what the constitution says. There was supposed to be an internal election happening on a regular basis, whereby if the people, for whatever reason, had an issue with the political leader, they could then elect somebody else to be the political leader and all the members of the executive council. However, since 2019, they have not had any meeting, they call it a summit, right? They do it a little different from some other political parties. They haven't had any summit. They haven't had any internal elections. And as a result of that, after the date that the last internal election was due, you had a situation whereby the two persons fall out, and it is done in such an informal manner, in such an undemocratic manner, that persons would have divorced themselves from the acronym, divorced themselves from the mandate, etc. And that, of course, that is another thing. When we did a poll, persons feel as though it is an attack on democracy. And so, yes, throughout Trinidad and Tobago, because examples could be given for all the political parties, we are seeing that political parties are not operating with anything resembling 100% democracy.
But is that utopia in terms of a cultural? Okay, so you're giving examples of it happening in Tobago, it's happening in Trinidad. Is that a cultural construct, and is full 100 democracy utopian in the sense of looking for some kind of democratic construct that we will not be able to achieve because it's utopian? Can you respond to that?
The pursuit of perfection is exactly what full 100 democracy is seeking. Yes, we know that perfection is something that most people would consider to be irrational. But if you look at the journey that we have been on for 100 years, you would see that we've been approaching perfection more and more. Initially, when you had the first election, you would have had, in 1925, February the 7th, you would have had only persons who are landowners, right? And the land valued at over $60. Back then, $60 was a lot of money, could vote. And after a while, by 1945, anybody over the age of 21 could vote, right? But then as time goes on, a couple of things you start seeing happening. You have more electoral districts or constituencies, and that way every smaller groups of individuals, smaller communities, etc., are now able to have a representative in the parliament, etc. And so we've continued to see improvement. So when we start to see, in contrast to improvement, we see the opposite of improvement happening, and we've seen the tide going down. We've seen a degrading in the way that democracy is being handled in the Trinidad and Tobago space, especially in this time when you are seeing power shifts globally, and we need to come up with the right answers to the questions all the time as fast as they keep coming to us. When we start seeing that, we get concerned. And if in the year 2025, the year of 100 years of experimenting and journeying towards, as you would put it, utopian level democracy, we cannot deal with that in this particular year, then that's a very troubling sign.
All right, so let me just quickly be the devil's advocate here. We have President Trump in the USA, and you mentioned the issue of undue influence, and President Trump openly, if you would have disagreed with him, he would remove you from a particular position. We have seen him do that to a number of persons in the USA, and the USA is supposed to be the example for democracy universally. Again, I ask the question, is full 100 democracy utopian, given that even the very USA, which is supposed to be the example of democracy to the world, operates in a manner that, gives cause for concern?
So, what was the question?
So I'm saying the USA, which is supposed to be that bastion, that example of democracy in the world, we see where President Trump would influence.
So you're asking if full 100 democracy is using that USA as an example?
No. I'm asking the question once again, if it's full democracy or full 100 democracy is utopian, meaning a state which we will not achieve, given that we're dealing with human beings and the construct of human beings and the way we behave in terms of the interaction with power and so on.
If I may just say one thing before Mr. Peter King jumps in, right? You would have said that the United States is supposed to be an example of democracy more so than any other state,
Sure.
etc. That statement is extremely false to begin with, right? Democracy as we exercise it today in the Western Hemisphere, right? It came originally from the Native Americans of where the border is now between the United States and Canada. It was called the Iroquois tribe, which part like how you have the Senate and the House of Representatives, all of that type of stuff, the way we do it, it came from that area. However, when you look at a country like Trinidad and Tobago, where one man, one vote is the situation. So when Mr. Peter King votes for somebody, his vote counts in contrast to he votes for somebody else to have a vote because of the system that the United States has. One could clearly see that as much as Trinidad and Tobago's democracy is flawed, it is not as flawed as the United States. And so you would, the idea of trying to make it that United States is what we should be aiming at, I think is the other way around. But we still need to improve our own democracy.
Okay. Producer, can we go to a break at this point?
I'll come up and let them, and then we'll come because he didn't get to speak much, right? Yeah, we stay on and we'll come. I think we answer that.
It's a different type of thing down there. And we party till we drop down there. With a lot of pretty girls down there. Down in Tobago.
You can now get whatever you need whenever you need it anywhere in Tobago with Tobago. Your meals, medication, groceries, and shopping all delivered directly to you. No more hassle, no more stress. Get the Tobago app today on Google Play or Apple App Store.
That's TAPPOGO and let us deliver to you.
Check our website at www.tapogo.app or call the experts at 494-TOGO and 484-4746. Tobago. Relax. We will get it to you. Tobago's at your service.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and the host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.
Spirit of God, you're here. You have all authority. I pray.
Good night, viewers. As we come close to wrapping, because we have actually run out of time, we have with us from Full 100 Democracy, Mr. Wade Carruth. And my question to Mr. Carruth is, having looked at the Tobago scenario, I suspect he might have heard the discussion with the minority. He might have had some sense of the civil net survey that says the minority has performed on average, has performed quite average. What would you like to see in the Tobago space that would make the Tobago construct of democracy better than it currently is?
Okay. Well, firstly, democracy is seen as the least perverse of governmental structures. Okay. So ultimately, as you say, we don't achieve a full utopia type scenario. But to me, in Tobago and democracy is concerned, I would like to see a more informed citizenry. I think a lot of the issue we have in Tobago where democracy is concerned is that the people not informed. They don't know, and they're voting based on party politics. I grew up doing this one, I grew up knowing that one, as opposed to making decisions, policy-based decisions, or things that would actually improve the standard of living of most Tobagonians. So ultimately, that is what I would like to see Tobago reach, to the point where people can make informed decisions based on information.
Okay, so what would be the work of full 100 democracy? What's your agenda like to foster that kind of citizenry in Tobago that would allow for informed voting, if I could use that term?
Okay.
So what would you like, or what would full 100 be doing as part of their mission, vision to achieve, a better and more informed citizenry in Tobago?
Demonstrating the practice of democracy by having people more involved in every decision, and thereby always going with the majority vote.
Right, but so the question is, how is full 100 democracy going to try to achieve that kind of construct in Tobago?
Right. Well, as we stand right now, we are a discussion group with members on WhatsApp. So we want to encourage more people to get involved with the WhatsApp conversation, and on a whole, get more people involved in the discussion of what democracy looks like to you. Because I don't want to just impose what I think it should be, but I want the Tobago citizenry to be informed as to and are part of the democratic process, as I would say. So we would like to disseminate information, we would like to create more discussions, and we would like to get the citizenry more informed.
Okay, well, so we look forward to full 100 democracy and their work to create a more informed citizenry in Tobago, such that we will have more decisions being made based on objective information rather than subjective information, if I could
Definitely
state it in a different kind of way. So, at this time, we want to thank Full Democracy for coming on the program to explain what full democracy is about, and we look forward to what full democracy will do in the Tobago space to create a more informed citizenry and to move us closer to this full 100 democracy idea. We have run out of time, actually. I have not been able to address some of the matters I would have liked to address, like sandals. Most certainly, I'll revisit sandals in a construct of dealing with what we do with the tourism industry in Tobago. So most certainly, I will get back to the whole issue of sandals and what we need to do about sandals, because in my mind, what we need to have is a clear policy for tourism in Tobago, a clear policy that states how we treat with, for example, all-inclusives. How do we engage them? I believe strongly that when, and in a general context of foreign direct investment, that Tobagonians need to have some share of an interest in these entities. So I would push for some share in the sandals construct for Tobagonians, so that we benefit from the profitability of sandals. And across the board, if you have foreign entities existing in the Tobago space, that we have some clear policy that dictates how we interact, and it's not subjective, and we can determine, and we can just decide this is what we want to do with sandals, probably do something else with Hilton, we probably do something else with another chain of hotels. And I would also like us to look at developing our own brand of hotel. In my mind, a place like Manta Lodge, we can brand Manta Lodge as a Tobago Dive branded hotel and export this throughout the Caribbean based on Tobago foods. Your breakfast is probably smoked herring and saltfish. Your lunch is probably bhaji rice and something else, and your dinner is probably fried bacon and something else. And we have THTI, and we can integrate them into this process, and we can develop a branded hotel, because basically that's what Sandals is about. It started with Butch Short, it started with one hotel in Jamaica, and it moved from there to elsewhere. But I think we need to have a policy as to how we treat with any chain of hotels that would like to be established in Tobago, so that it's clear from the investor standpoint as to how they need to engage us if they want to set up shop here. And also we have some pre-clearance. I think Dr. Terence Farrell had alluded to it, and it's something, I think makes sense that you have a pre-clearance of sites, so you don't have a fight when a hotel chain comes here as to whether or not they should be in No Man's Land or in Rockley Point or wherever, but they are clear that these are the sites that can be utilized for hotel construction. And it goes to a further policy on land use, how we divide Tobago for land use, housing, hotel construction, as the case may be. But on another occasion, I will delve a bit further into the whole issue of, and maybe at the next session, on the airport and the disrespect in my mind to the office of the Chief Secretary in the way in which the airport was opened. I have a serious issue with how it was done and the disrespect that was meted out to the office of the Chief Secretary. The producer is indicating that it's time to wrap up. So thank you, viewers, for another opportunity to get into your rooms and your spaces where we can discuss with you these matters that are important to Tobago and the development of Tobago. Thank you once again. Good night, and we see you again next week, same place, same time, on the Plain Talk program.
The following was a paid political broadcast.